Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Henry Hemming, Managing Director of Trav Media. Welcome to the latest instalment of Trav Media Meets. We've got a special one this morning. In our series, What Do Travel Editors Want? We've met quite a few of the UK's leading travel editors so far. But today the question is, what does one travel editor want? As our guest star is the Daily Mail's travel and indeed property editor, Mark Palmer. Mark, it's lovely to have you with us this morning.
Morning, Henry. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us. So Mark joins us at a time of a double celebration for himself and the paper. First of all, he's 10 years in charge in the hot seat on the Mail travel desk. Secondly, the Daily Mail this year leapfrogged the Sun into first position as the UK's leading circulation national newspaper. So he is presiding over some very, very important travel pages. And good news as well, as we begin to hopefully see rays of light, an end to the epidemic, or at least a resumption of normal life. I'm glad to say Mark's pages have gone back to 8 pages a week. So that's a very good sign. I hope for everyone joining us today that life is getting easier for all of you. And it's very nice to have you joining us. So before we get going and we turn to Mark, just a couple of the usual housekeeping things. Firstly, most important one, do start asking questions on the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd be so kind as to put in your company name as well with your question, that is great, because we just see your first name and surname, just in case we don't know you. I'm sure we do know you. Secondly, if you're feeling social, it's hashtag TravMediaMeets. And thirdly, Trav Media Meets, we've got a social channel as well. We're running monthly quizzes. Just to say that we've got another quiz coming up with Atlantic Canada in August, and we'll get details of that to you as soon as possible. The last one was brilliant fun, so I do hope that we'll have a great turnout for that. So, to the man himself, Mark Palmer, travel editor at the Daily Mail. So, just to introduce you, Mark, and then I'm going to ask you to say a few words to our audience. You've been a travel editor for 10 years. You describe yourself, I think unfairly, as a veteran of Fleet Street. You started off on the Londoners' Diary pages at the Evening Standard, which I remember reading at the time. Joined the Sunday Telegraph, worked your way up quickly to news editor. You then joined the Daily Express as executive editor. But when Lord Hollick bought the paper and shifted its allegiance for a short while to the Labour Party, you were summarily ousted. He then, out there in the wild, you went freelance, working as a columnist for the Times, restaurant critic for the Daily Telegraph, football analyst, wonderful, for Canada's Globe and Mail, and you found time to write some books, including Clark's Made to Last, the story of Britain's best-known shoe firm. In more recent times, you've been there at the Daily Mail running the travel pages. Tell us about how you've shaped the Daily Mail's travel to your vision, Mark, and also how you've coped during the epidemic and how the pages are beginning to change at this time.
Well, thank you, Henry. Thank you so much for having me, and hello, everybody out there. Hope it's not too early in the morning for you, but good to get cracking early on. Well, when the goalposts have shifted considerably since I joined the Mail, and that's partly because, well, mainly I think because we've had a change of editor, and no disrespect to Paul Dacre, who was in the chair for a long time, but he never quite understood the point of holidays, and in fact he used to refer to the travel section as the bloody holiday pages, and never quite realized that it was a tremendous sort of money spinner. I think he thought that people would advertise anyway, and he wanted always to take pages away from us and to give it to features. And then at the same time, you have sport encroaching from the back of the paper, always wanting more space. So when I joined, it was called Travel Mail, and we had sort of 4 pages or something. And it was very frustrating, to be perfectly honest with you. And the Mail on Sunday, they actually had a sort of bigger section than we did. So we sort of, we trugged along, and at that time, to be perfectly honest, I don't think we had a really clear vision for what we were doing on the travel pages. We weren't particularly commercial. We had very little interaction with the advertising department, etc. And then when Paul Dacre left and Geordie Greig took over, and I was quite quick to send him a kind of big long document as to why I felt we were missing a trick and how holidays have become such a sort of a crucial thing in people's lives, older people traveling more, younger people wanting experiences and that sort of thing. And so about a year, I suppose it was what, a year and a half ago or so, then we launched Escape, and which we have one page on a Wednesday, and then we have our main section, which is on a Saturday. And we have had, until the pandemic, we had 10 pages every Saturday, which was fantastic. And advertising actually picked up considerably. And I think that people saw that, you know, we were really serious about travel. We had a lot more cruise advertising, and the cruising sector is incredibly important to the Daily Mail. And I think it's just worth pointing out that it's always quite good to imagine who your sort of reader is. And the majority of our readers clearly are over 50. A lot of our readers are probably over 60 and probably a big number over 70. And that's why, for example, cruising is such an important area for us, and why it's obviously been a very difficult time, both for us and for the cruising sector. Our paper on a Saturday, during the week, as we understand it, that we sell around 1 million copies Monday to Friday. And then it's funny, I was just looking today actually at the chairman's office sends through periodically a kind of update as to where we stand. And the Saturday edition, I'm just reading it on the other screen, the Saturday edition of Daily Mail sells an additional 581,000 copies, which means that brings us up on a Saturday to 1,754,598 copies. And then they estimate, obviously the advertiser estimate that that's read by over 3.1 million adults. That's based on, you know, household of 2 people, 3 people, or whatever. So it's a big, you know, it's a big circulation, and I'm delighted that we have been able to keep some sort of presence during this time. So what happened at the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak, we lost all our advertising, as did other sections and across the board. Absolutely 0 ads. And as you know, pagination depends almost entirely on ads. So, but thankfully, with a lot of lobbying, and we managed to keep going with 6 pages with no ads. And I suppose that's quite a dangerous strategy, but we kept going. And finally, I think we're just beginning to come out of it. I mean, for Saturday's paper, for example, 1, 2, 3, we have 5 ads going in the section, and that's for the first time in 4 months. So, and we won't be back up to 10 pages, but as you were saying, Henry, we will hopefully be up at 8 pages. When it comes to the sort of content, we have changed quite considerably, I think, our outlook. Even before the pandemic, we were very aware that with that number of pages, that we could get a really good balance between short haul, long haul, but then also consumer pieces, really looking at travel insurance, looking at parking at airports, whatever it may be. Really kind of quite investigative, you know, really trying to help people to negotiate some of these kind of tricky areas of travel. What's the best seat to book on an airplane, whatever it may be. And we've kept that going, and we invented this thing called the Holiday Guru, which is a sort of weekly Q&A where our readers are very frustrated and they want to know what they can do about this or that. And what we have done in the last 4 months is almost every week we've had an expanded sort of Q&A and really trying to help people to understand where can they go on holiday, where is it safe to go on holiday, all those sort of things, because it's so incredibly confusing. And when we were in the height of it with the talk about air bridges and travel corridors, and then everybody thought, well, that's going to happen, and then Portugal wasn't on the list, and then now Ireland is saying they don't want us. So it is a sort of a minefield for people, and we're just trying to help people to be able to make their own decision about travel at this time, because clearly it's very different. And for example, we sent Harry Mount to Venice last weekend, and he got a flight which was, I think it was something like £75 return. I think it was a Ryanair flight, and he booked an Airbnb, and he filed his copy yesterday, and which is really fascinating. I mean, he argues that it's a chance to see Venice now as it was meant to have been seen, hundreds of years ago, and that he went into the Duomo for mass, 10 a.m. mass, and he counted the number of the congregation, and they numbered 15, including the lilting voice of the Italian priest. And that was an amazing experience. And so there are some gains, if you like, for this period, but it's a question as to how comfortable people feel about traveling, how comfortable they feel about getting on an aeroplane with lots of other people, and making that decision. And so that's what we're trying to do at the moment. I just feel that when you're trying to put out a travel section, it's like putting out a newspaper in general, or a magazine. A lot of it is sort of instinct and just getting a feeling of where we are this week as opposed to last week. And often I get a PR will send an email saying that could we let them know about our sort of what we're planning for the next few months, and whether we're going to be doing this sort of roundup or concentrating on this or that. And I always have to say, to be quite honest, I don't really know. I have no idea what we're going to do next Saturday. I know what we're going to do this Saturday because it's now Thursday. Because everything can change, and you just get a feel for what's right. I mean, this time last week, the Foreign Office changed its guidance about cruising, for example, and rightly, finally, came around to realize that there was no reason to ban or to advise against river cruises. And so as soon as we heard that, I think that was Wednesday afternoon, then we decided that we should do a whole spread on, fabulous river cruises that you can do as from the 1st of September. And so that just sort of came as a base, bouncing off what was going on in the sort of wider news world. And a lot of it also with travel can depend on things like the weather. I mean, if it's a miserable and cloudy in the UK, well, then you want to sort of brighten people's lives up and take them to the Caribbean or something like that. So it's quite a sort of organic, instinctive process, and I'm sure we don't always get the balance right, but I'm just so pleased that we have now the space to do what we want to do.
That's great to hear. And I think we've got Viking River Cruises in the audience, so that's hopefully one very happy person at the moment. We had great registrations for today. I didn't say earlier, but over 100 people from pretty much every continent of the world. So Mark, if I may, I will get on to one or two questions we've had. And to you, the audience, please think about posting your questions to Mark Palmer, travel editor of the Daily Mail, in our Q&A box. I'll start with a question from Elizabeth Fox, owner of Fox Communications. So a good question about crazy prices. You said it yourself then. She says, and she says it like it is, she said, despite all the misinformation in the media, I'm sure she does not mean you here, pointing towards travel prices skyrocketing to inaccessible levels. Actually, Mark, what is your take on the current climate of unbelievably low prices? How long do you think that will last? What are your views on price?
Yeah, well, that's so interesting and a really good question. We've actually got a piece on Saturday where we look at these the prices, but mainly concentrating on as I mentioned about Venice, so mainly concentrating on the great sort of cities of Europe, really. So Milan, Rome, Dubrovnik, for example, where there are some ridiculously low prices. I think Dubrovnik, I think it's literally sort of £35 return or something absurd. And you compare that now to this time last year. And to go to Dubrovnik now, where you haven't got the cruise ships, I mean, Dubrovnik, as you probably know, is one of the most, I think, beautiful and extraordinary cities in Europe. But the last time I was there, and we tried to get early to the walled city, but our arrival coincided with a cruise ship that was bringing people ashore, and we had to literally wait about 20 minutes before we could even get into the city. So this is an extraordinarily wonderful moment to go to some of these cities, and there are some fantastic flight bargains to be had. There is obviously the danger if you go flight only and then suddenly the flight is cancelled, then you've got a hassle, you've got a problem. But surely that's, if you're paying sort of £75 return, perhaps that's a risk worth taking. As to how long that will continue for, I think it's likely to continue into the autumn, because there's no great stampede, even though we've got now these so-called travel corridors, and we're now, the advice has changed, but we've been monitoring airports and that sort of thing, and they're still very quiet. And so the airlines, if they want to keep flying, they're going to have to keep rolling out these deals. So I think we can expect that to continue, not just actually short haul to European cities, but there are also some terrific prices to the Caribbean and other places which might not be on people's list at this particular time. But I think all of that will continue until certainly September, October, and into November.
Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, you said yourself you don't look much further forward than Saturday at the moment, but do you have a rough split in your pages between domestic and overseas travel at the moment?
Well, that's interesting, because we've always tried to do sort of UK short haul, long haul, consumer. Basically, those are sort of the four areas. But when it's come to long haul, I've just felt sort of just slightly uncomfortable about it. Really, I know that we can do it, and then people can book for sort of way ahead and everything else. But I just get the feeling that not many people are thinking about going long haul to Japan, and they certainly won't be going to Australia or New Zealand. It just feels a little bit random doing that. Although, having said that, on Saturday we're running a piece about a family adventure, sort of big family holiday to Thailand, on a sort of sun sail holiday where you charter a yacht and all that sort of thing. So that is, I think occasionally we can drop that in, but I have to say I'm not really thinking too much about long haul at the moment.
Okay, that's absolutely.
Perhaps they should though. I mean, perhaps that's wrong. I don't know. I mean, perhaps people want to plan for next year, and we should be doing more. I just feel there's so much going on domestically and everything else that's probably where our emphasis should be.
Yeah. I mean, it must be very tough being a travel editor at the moment, because you have an inbuilt allegiance to the industry because of the friends you've made, the people you've met, but also there's that balancing act with what can people safely do, given that the epidemic still hasn't hit its peak in certain parts of the world.
Yes, well, I mean, that's a good point too, Henry, because it is in our interest to support the industry. It's in our interest to support the cruise companies. It's in our interest to support the airlines. If when we see Thomas Cook going out of business, we see our advertising revenues drop considerably. I mean, that is the fact of the matter. If anything happened to something like sandals or it would be a disaster for them, and it'd be very bad for us. So there is that kind of coexistence situation going on. But at the same time, we received and continue to receive so many letters every week and emails from readers who have got real issues with their airline, real issues with their travel agency, their travel company, their tour operator. They can't get through on the telephone. They don't want to a voucher. They don't want to book, go into advance in the book next year. They want their money back now, and the law says that they should have their money back. But we understand very much that when you furloughed staff, you haven't got the people to answer the telephone. You haven't got the money to give people their refunds, and so it's been really difficult to be on the side of both the industry and of the reader. And I think we have felt very much sort of stuck in the middle, basically, on that one.
So you mentioned sandals there. Natalie Eales of Sandals has just written in saying, when would you consider putting people onto press trips again?
Well, we went on our almost first press trip. Was it last weekend or the weekend before? We went on a TUI trip to Ibiza. I think quite a lot of people went on that, and that was a chance to just to see on the ground, what's going on. TUI is again quite sort of important for us in some ways, biggest tour operator, and so we've started to go on press trip. I mean, the fact is there weren't many press trips to go on, but if there was a press trip now, to be quite honest with you, we have a lot of copy sort of stacked up, but we have got through a lot of copy without actually replenishing the stock, if you like. So we're very up for press trips at the moment. We sent 2 weeks ago. We sent 9 different people to all different countries in Europe to try to tell readers what's really going on in Croatia, in Cyprus, in Malta, in France, in Spain. So we did that off our own bat. But we're very, very happy for any press trips, people to can whisk us away somewhere, both short haul and long haul.
Okay. So cruising, very, very important to the Mail. Bryony Gammon, who's head of PR for Viking, says, thank you very much for the support you have shown in recent times towards the FCO advice. Good news on river cruising. She's asking, what do you believe the sentiment of the Mail's readers is at the moment towards cruising in general? Are they aching to get back onto the latest ships, or internationally, or do they understand that there's going to be a little bit of a pause still?
Yeah, I think they're aching to get back on board. I think that the message has got through that these the ships are doing everything they possibly can. It's going to be different from before. That you may perhaps won't have the breakfast buffet or whatever. But I think that for a lot of older people in particular, I think they're really looking forward to getting back on board. I think they feel reassured by what they read about what the companies are doing. And again, I think there are some enticing deals to be had, particularly in 2021. I mean, it's good to see that there are still sort of new ships that are coming online. I know that we've had disappointment this week with one cruise company, but in general, I think that there's a lot to look forward to in cruising, and there will be perhaps some more casualties, but I think our readers are really looking forward to getting back on board.
Okay. I think you've partly answered this already, but I've got a question from Stefania Gatta at the Italian National Tourist Office. They've been promoting, as tourism has gradually kind of come back for Italy after their epidemic, they've been promoting active holidays off the beaten track. Obviously, those jewels of tourism previously suffering from over-tourism, as Stefania says, Venice, Rome, Florence, they need to see city break travellers coming back. Do you feel that the time is soon approaching? Maybe I'm asking you to gaze into a crystal ball.
Well, no, I think it's a difficult one because I think people want to be a bit isolated away from other people, and they kind of think to themselves, if I go to Rome or something, I'm going to be with lots of other people, and that's going to be dangerous. The fact is, if you go to Rome, you're going to have Piazza Navona to yourself pretty much. So I think we need to be encouraging people to go to these great cities in Italy and elsewhere. I absolutely. I just think that again, it's a confidence thing, really, but the sooner that we get going on that, the better. You mentioned Italy and your question from, I think you said that she was from the Italian
tourist office.
Tourism. But I mean, I absolutely adore Italy, and I was all set to go myself to Calabria at the end of September, because I thought that Calabria is a kind of slightly not unknown, but it's a lesser known part of Italy. But to my horror, yesterday, the hotel where I was going to stay on the sort of eastern coast of Calabria, they just announced that I think they've opened, but they're going to close on September the 15th, and I'm due to go on September the 25th. So, with the best will of the world, I was trying to get Calabria and Italy on the map, but they've pulled the rug from under my feet.
Where else do you think you might go, Mark?
I actually, to be perfectly honest, I haven't got plans to go anywhere. I mean, not because I don't know, sort of concentrating very much on sort of getting through this period, but I can't wait actually to go somewhere. I mean, there's so many places. I mean, I've never been to Vietnam, for example, and I really want to go. And I'm quite into that whole sort of war thing. The issue there is that my wife is not at all interested in war things, and so that's requiring a little bit of negotiation. But I mean, I'm hoping very much that 2021 winter sun, I'm hoping that the market will pick up then, and I'm hoping that the Caribbean will pick up, and because our readers, it's a really important part of the world, and so I'm really keen to hear about if there are kind of new things going on in the Caribbean, if there's some deals to be had, where people can book that now for sort of January, February, March, April. That would be fantastic.
And there's going to be further government advice on corridors next Monday from Grant Shapps, I think.
Well, yes. I mean, I don't know. I think the government has made such a sort of muddle, to be perfectly honest, of this whole thing. And I mean, it's been. I just keep thinking that there's nobody really is in charge and has got to grips with it. And so, yeah, we keep hearing there'll be another announcement, and sometimes you get the impression that sort of Britain is assuming that everybody wants us and we want others, when in fact we've got almost the worst death record in the whole world, so I think it's great that other countries want us, and that whole quarantine thing was just absurd to suddenly sort of close the door in what was it, sort of July, when the door was wide open at the height of the pandemic in April, when anybody was allowed to come into the country. And then the whole quarantine thing was a fiasco because not one single person was checked up to see whether they'd actually quarantined for 14 days. And I think it just wasted so much civil servant time. And so anyway, sorry to go on a rant about the government's failings on this, but I think it's up to individuals now to take responsibility and decide, right, I'm going to do this, and assess the risk themselves.
Yeah. Fair enough. So turning to the USA, one of Britain's favourite holiday playgrounds, I've got a kind of double-header question here. First of all, from Emily Thompson from the Brand USA team at Hills Balfour. Whilst we're not currently able to travel to the US, would Mark consider covering aspects of the US as inspiration for 2021 travel? And also, how do you recommend that PRs for all the individual states and cities and so forth engage with and inspire the Daily Mail team at the moment? That's the first question.
Yeah, well, the short answer is yes, absolutely, I would. In fact, we ran a piece just the other day about San Diego, so making the point that everybody thinks California thinks of Los Angeles, San Francisco, but actually San Diego is a fascinating place, in fact, and I feel very comfortable doing that. I think there are certainly issues in America. I think that politically it's pretty unstable. Obviously, you have the awful sort of police issues, and the sort of impression I suppose that people have is that America is in some respects in sort of turmoil, and clearly the pandemic is raging there. But we know it's very clear that you can't go to America now. You simply can't. And in one way, that gives us some clarity. So it's off the menu now. But for 2021, then I think that we should be looking at America, not just New York, but New England, just places, just even sort of Middle America, wherever it's such a huge country, and that we should be doing more to support America, if you like, for next year.
Fair enough. And from David Ezra, Director of PR at KBC, what are your impressions of the USA and Canada together as potential destinations? Do you feel there's a difference in the way the Daily Mail's readers perceive the two countries, and which might they be choosing to travel to next? So
yeah, that's an interesting question. Yes, I think that we have a natural affiliation with Canada, obviously because of our historic roots. I think that we know that Canada is a huge country with not many people in it, and so it offers tremendous opportunities for outdoor living, wildlife, tremendous scenery, friendly people who I think in general like Britain, and Canada likes the fact that it's not America, and kind of revels in that in some way. So Canada is very important for us. I sometimes think that we should be doing more in Canada. But we try and run quite a few sort of family. I think it's a terrific family destination because it's safe, and so many sort of wonderful adventures you can do. And I think with America, it's a different market. It tends to be it's much more the cities, Florida, amusement parks and that sort of thing. And I don't think that we perhaps do enough in America about America's great outdoors and all the kind of things that you can do as a family.
So it's slightly a disconnected thought, this, but a lot of people have been saying post-epidemic, when we get back to normal, because we've simply got to get back to normal, we're going to get much more into sustainable travel. So they see a connection between the epidemic and climate and so forth. But to some extent, I know that it has made people rethink. So, for example, Ken Scott, who's joined us from Scott Asia, says, does the Daily Mail have an interest in promoting sustainable travel, post-epidemic?
Yes, it does. I think that the jury is still out as to whether the average traveller from the UK is going to have a kind of responsible attitude, is going to think more about the sort of environment, want to put something back into the pot, all those sort of things which we've touched upon during the lockdown, seeing travel in a different way. I wonder whether long term that is going to really stand up. Obviously one hopes that it will, but I think that a lot of people just want to get out and want to get into the sunshine and drink beer and lie on the beach and go back to a sort of revisionist kind of holiday, if you like. Yeah. But I think certainly there are other people who during this period have had a chance to reflect, to think about their own lives and think about how they relate to the larger world. And I think that those people will want to go somewhere and feel that they're making a difference, perhaps, that they will have a renewed interest in the culture of whatever country it is that they want to go to. And I think that's fantastic. I also think that people during lockdown have read more, or they've become more sort of interested perhaps in countries further afield, and will want now to visit those countries.
Yep. Fully understood. So Liz Edwards from TUI, we've discussed TUI, she's just posted a question live. Travel is a confidence game. How closely, Mark, do you work with your news colleagues to hear about reports of borders potentially, reopening or closing, and also working with your colleagues on the news desk about reassuring that overseas holidays are still possible?
Well, actually, one of the good things that has come out of all this for us is much closer collaboration with the news desk. I mean, when you think about it, this is the biggest story in my whole kind of life in newspapers, and this is actually the biggest story of my life, and it's the biggest story of my life because it is a story that is reflected on every page of the newspaper or every section of the newspaper. This is a health story fundamentally, but it's also a financial story. It's also become a travel story. It's become a story that impinges on every aspect of our lives, and so we have worked very closely with the news desk and got involved with sort of news stories and that sort of thing. And now, whereas it was kind of a bit church and state, we did our thing, they did theirs. There's been a lot more collaboration, and I'm really pleased about that.
And I'm sure your background as a national newspaper news editor has helped the Daily Mail with its page.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I think that the way you approach a travel story, and everybody's got their own way, but I would say, and I suppose, because my background with sort of news, when I go somewhere, I kind of approach it as if I'm going there as a sort of news reporter, really, and the idea is to really try to get to the heart and soul of the place, and that means that you talk to people and that you quote people, and you have experiences and things go wrong and anecdotes and all that, and what you don't do, I don't think you should do, is you shouldn't really talk about sitting in a taverna by the harbour eating calamari washed down by a nice bottle of Retsina or something. I mean, because I don't think people care. People know that's what you do on holiday. But I'd be far more interested to hear about the story that the waiter has told you rather than what's actually on your plate. So I think that travel writing or travel it should be approached as a kind of a news story, and that when you go somewhere that you're trying to imagine that nobody's ever been there before, and you're trying to get to the root of that place.
A very interesting question with the Olympics coming up a year late, admittedly, in 2021 in Japan. Interesting question on green and sustainable parts of Japan from Yumiko Nishitani from Sakura Public Relations, who is promoting the Tohoku region of Japan. Says, are you interested in covering the nature-rich, less travelled, less populated parts of Japan as part of any potential coverage you may do around next year's Olympics?
Yes, well, we'll definitely be doing quite a lot in the run-up to the Olympics. I mean, we had planned various things, and I think that Japan is, I love Japan, and I think our readers increasingly actually recognise that Japan is a fantastic opportunity to see a different way of life, really, and such a sort of, in a way, gentle and respectful people, wonderful. I always remember when I was, I covered the work with the Telegraph. I covered the Football World Cup when it was in Japan, and I always remember going down to the platform to get the bullet train, and they were coming sort of all the time, and got on the train. The next morning, I read in the English language newspaper that there was been an inquiry because the bullet train had arrived 45 seconds late into the station, and this was a big story. Because I didn't quite understand why it was in Japan on the underground where that people just sort of lined up all in a sort of long line, whereas you know, in the tube in London, people just sort of stretch out across the platform. And I thought, well, that's a bit silly. And I realized it's actually because it's so practical, because the trains come every 45 seconds and you just sort of file in, and it actually makes life a lot easier. Anyway, I think that Japan is a great destination for us. It's a great destination for older readers who've got a bit more time on their hands. The big drawback for Japan is it is very expensive, and it's traditionally it's expensive to get there, and it's expensive once you're there. And so most people, if they're going to go to Japan maybe once or twice in their lives, obviously they're going to go to Tokyo, Kyoto, whatever. So in answer to your question, or the questioner, I think the lesser known and sort of green sustainable parts of Japan sounds like a brilliant idea. I just wonder how practical that is for our readers, but very keen for any ideas and any help and support for that would be greatly appreciated.
Great, very good. No, good point. Luigi Nappo from Flag Travel and Holidays posts a very interesting question about the shape of the market. Is saying that people are going to want to go to off the beaten track destinations maybe over the next couple of years. A lot of people will think like that. The big tour operators can't offer those destinations sometimes because they can't do the volume, they can't scale it, they can't make it work. Do you think this is going to be a golden period for small travel specialist companies, Mark?
Well, those who've survived, I think sort of, you know, they really demand to be a lot of respect and command a lot of respect, and I think they've done, you know, fabulously well in clearly what's been just such a difficult time. I like to think that the small specialist tour operator sort of having a niche market, whether it's watercolor holidays or learning to do this or learning to that, I just hope that they will sort of thrive. The one problem that there is, I often think about this, is that it's the big boys, if you like, or the larger companies that can afford to have, for example, a PR company, and you know, travel PRs are I think are fantastically good in the main, and they do a wonderful job and everything else. But of course, they are representing companies that can afford to have PRs, and it's the small little operators which I would like to hear from, and if they can just get in touch directly, then I'd really like to hear from them, because I think we should be doing more with them and supporting those kind of niche companies.
So talking PR companies, Mason Rose, Claire Jackson. So this is a very interesting one. You will have heard this week, Mark, that WTM has said we're going ahead. It's going to be one of the first kind of post-lockdown large-scale conferences that is going ahead. We don't know on how big it's going to be, how many of those halls it will take up, that sort of thing. But Claire says, you know, what are your thoughts at the moment on hotel-hosted media events? Would you be attending breakfast and dinners at this time? If not, are you still in a mindset of virtual events? Are you happy to do one-to-one, face-to-face meetings? What are your thoughts for your team on that at the moment, Mark?
Yeah, we're absolutely ready to do face-to-face meetings, and I've done some already. I think we've also learned that when you can do a virtual Zoom meeting like this, it can save quite a lot of time, and it's a pleasant way of doing it. It was a bit odd to start with, but we got so used to it now. I mean, I'm here actually. I'm in Scotland at the moment, and rather than being, I should really be in the office, but my brother's not very well, so that's why I'm here, and I'll go back on Saturday. But actually, after I've finished this, I will then do a Zoom call with the chap who designs our pages. He'll share his screen, and it's like I'm just sitting beside him in the office. So I think we've learned quite a lot about that, and things will definitely change. But in answer to your question, I'm absolutely ready for meetings or breakfast or whatever. And I suppose by the time, what are the dates of WTM, Henry? Do we know the exact dates?
It's the first Monday in November. That hasn't changed So it will be Monday, the 2nd of November through to Wednesday, the 4th.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that's great news, and as you say, we don't know quite sort of what form it will take. Will it be? Is it going to be in the Excel Centre again? Is that the plan?
It's in Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, WTM is it's a tricky one for us. I mean, it's great that so many people are over here and setting up sort of interviews and everything else. We don't do too much of that, and we're so kind of destination driven. And I always feel WTM is more something for the sort of the industry, for travel companies, tour operators, PRs, and that sort of thing. So we don't really get too involved, and therefore don't attend many meetings at the Excel Centre and that sort of thing. But during that time when people are in town, and if there's a chance for a breakfast meeting or they're having a do, you know, I think we're all sort of travel editors, travel journalists, are kind of longing for the good old days when we're invited to a nice drinks party and get to meet, you know, fellow journalists and to meet PRs and tour operators and everything. I think that I can't wait for all that to start.
No, not can I. Much as I love joining people on these Zooms, I wish I was with everyone in real life. On that point, Trav Media's IMM will take place next March 15th, 16th in the QE2 Centre, and I can't wait to get back and see everyone from around the world there, hopefully. I've got a question from Michael Price at Visit Wales. Says, do you think staycations is going to be a bigger, longer term trend now? And also, what can PRs do to avoid the sheer amount of tourism to honeypot locations such as the summit of Mount Snowdon, which made itself so famous recently?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we've got on to staycations. Not a word that I particularly like. I think it's on my banned words list, but we all understand what it means. And I think that that the domestic market is it's really interesting at the moment, because when you read about, well, today Spain possibly going into retreat in some form, but then also when I think last week there was a picture of people queuing up to get onto the beach at Benidorm or somewhere and all that. And so that's when I think you start thinking, well, actually, let's try and find somewhere to go in the UK in August or September. And obviously that's why there's been a big run on holiday cottages, holiday homes, and that sort of thing. And now whether that will stick, whether that will be the same next year, or do you take the view, well, this year we've been in Cornwall or in Norfolk and it's been pretty rainy, or it's not been pretty rainy, or whatever it is, but you know, next year we're going to go to Corfu, next year we're going to make sure we've got our dedicated, guaranteed sunshine. I suspect that that's what we'll see a bit of next year. But on the other hand, I think it has been a great opportunity to discover our own country in some way, and even if you go to, you know, some of the great our great cities, you know, Durham, wherever it is, where again, you know, that you can have the place to yourself, and so that's I think a real plus. I think that we've got a piece on Saturday, which is slightly along the lines of your question. I think was asking. It's about, yes, so Polzeath or Holcombe or these sort of great beaches, these well-known beaches, Newquay, will be pretty busy in the next few weeks. So what we've tried to do is to try to look at some of the sort of Britain's hidden beaches, if you like, or the lesser known beaches, or beaches where, you know, you park and you've got to sort of walk for half a mile to get to, or something. There might not be many facilities when you get there. And I think that opportunity to explore and get to know our own country more, it has been one of the great advantages of this period. But as to whether that will stick next year, I'm not too sure.
But you are, to try and share the tourism load, you're trying to look at new and forgotten British hideaways.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, we will continue to do. I mean, I don't think we've ever done more kind of UK based holidays in all the time I've been at the Mail. But I think, you know, I think the general feeling about the editor said the other day that surely that, you know, people are, with all the hassle and the uncertainty, surely this is going to be a sort of bumper year for UK tourism. And obviously it started very late, but we're hearing that, you know, campsites, holiday parks, you know, hotels by the sea are all doing very well. And so I think we need to reflect that.
Got a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. Mark, very much appreciate the time you're giving us. So Jess Millett at Transindus says, thanks for the support you're showing to small tour operators this morning. As a small specialist tour operator, she says, what is the best way to pitch to you? How to get in touch with Mark Palmer?
Well, I suppose by email, although I kind of like receiving things through the post, but I think obviously by email. And I think the thing is, you know, short and sweet. I mean, I think there's a difference between, so the people who get in contact with me are, in the main, are PRs and journalists. And when a journalist, freelance journalist gets in touch, I just want to know very quickly what, in a couple of sentences, what the story is, what the proposal is, before we, and then we can get into a discussion as to how it might work. And it's no good just saying that, would I be interested in a piece about Croatia? You know, which you do get those sort of emails, and it's got to have some sort of angle to it, or something new about it, or some hook, some peg. And then also when a freelance or a PR person again says, what sort of thing are you looking for? And that's just a hopeless question. Because you could give a long answer, but I really sort of honestly can't be bothered to sort of respond to that, really. It's like saying, what do I think the weather will be like in, you know, 3 weeks' time or something. So the best way is by email. The best way is to come up, you know, with a top line. What is the story? If it's a new hotel opening, that's great. We have a column called Inspector Calls, who's always looking for new hotels. That's a column where we pay our way. There's no PR involved, so we just do it and tell it like it is. And so whenever there's a new hotel opening, we try and do that pretty quickly. That's quite an easy one. So, you know, new hotel opening, blah, 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 done. I think if it's a particular angle to a story, well then we've got to, you know, I need to know in the first couple of sentences what the angle is, what, you know, and what the story is. It's awful when you have to sort of email back a PR, they're telling you about something, some wonderful thing, but you have to email back and say, well, what's actually the story? And the story from their point of view, it obviously is to get their clients in the paper, but it requires just a little bit more of a twist, a little bit more work to come up with an angle that's actually going to achieve that goal.
Louise Pearson, LP Communications, says, are you going to be doing more stories on road trips for people who just don't want to fly? And I will add to that, are you going to become the champion of the motorhomer?
Yes, well, absolutely. Yeah, we have got a couple of, I think the motorhome is, again, we did a piece just the other day. I think that, I think road trips is great. We've got a piece coming up about northern France area where you can just drive, go through on a ferry or through the tunnel. I think that, yeah, I think it's good news for road trips, and we will definitely be doing more of those, and you know, road trips in the UK as well.
And Liz Blakeborough says, are you keen to receive European press trip invites? And I'm guessing you are, providing it's on approved corridors.
I'm always pleased to hear from Liz, and she's diligent in the way she keeps in touch with us. And in fact, I think we've just sent somebody to one of her clients in great Yarmouth. I think Liz would agree with that. And so yeah, no, absolutely. I just feel that if you don't get a reply, it doesn't mean that one mustn't take these things personally. And I try to reply as much as I can, even in a sort of very short form. But we're very, very open at the moment for new ideas and new angles to old stories.
Very good. Well, maybe Liz, or indeed someone out there, can find you a replacement summer holiday. I think we'll wrap up now, Mark. From us all, thank you so much for your time. It's been a very illuminating hour. I found out an awful lot about you and your readership. Thank you very much for giving us your time. It's been a real...
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for taking this time out from your busy day.
It's been great seeing you, and everyone else, we'll see you the next time. There's plenty more coming up in the months ahead. Take care.